All right, this is Richard Djerf, who is being put to death in Arizona tomorrow morning. This is for the 1993 murders of the Luna family. It is a heinous crime that has rocked this community for years, so much so that people were even messaging me about it today on social media, talking about how they don't forget these victims of the Luna family, one of them being a teenager, another being a 5-year-old boy, and how they want this chapter to come to an end, this storybook of Richard Djerf and what he did. This is an important story because our Arizona's Family news anchor, Scott Passmore, interviewed Richard Djerf in jail 30 years ago. And I really dug into our archives and our tape files to learn more about what that interview was like, what the actual crime was like back in 1993, and where we are now. I have been messaging with Richard Djerf now for a couple weeks, and he messaged me all the way up until today. I'm going to read you that after we take you through this story, but I wanted to kind of dive deep into the case here so you get to know the Luna family, who they were, what the crime was, and then see Richard Djerf in jail 30 years ago compared to what he's saying now. So take a listen and take a watch to this story that explains the entire case from 1993 until today, 2025.
I got a letter sent to me personally, and I remember seeing Richard Djerf on the outside of it.
It's 1995. The brazen killer just convicted. A young Arizona's Family anchor, Scott Passmore, gets invited by Djerf himself to do a jailhouse interview about the day he killed the Luna family. Passmore had no idea what was about to happen when he sat down with Djerf face to face.
I had the father restrained. He broke loose and came charging me and stabbed me, and then I pulled my gun and just started shooting.
So that made you even more angry?
No? Well, I don't know what happened. I was just like, I got taken over to a new level or something like that.
I just remember him just talking about everything that he had done, and it was just like it was no big deal. It was so matter of fact and nonchalant.
The reason I went over there, it was I was basically daring myself to see how far I could go before I turned back and before I basically chickened out. But it was like I lost control and I didn't chicken out.
I've never gotten a letter from somebody saying, hey, come down, I want to talk about this crime I did.
Why do you think he wrote it to you?
I have no idea.
What Djerf had done was unthinkable.
Oh my God. He said his mom's face is all kicked up and he can smell gas, and his little brother's laying on the table.
He had used a ruse to get into the West Phoenix home of the Luna family with a plan to kill them all to get back at his Safeway co-worker, Albert Luna Jr., who Djerf believed had stolen something from his home. Djerf raped and killed Albert's teen sister, killed his 5-year-old brother, and both parents, knowing his co-worker would eventually find his family dead.
Thinking about it after it happened, it was like watching a film or a movie or something like that. That's the only way I can really describe it.
How so?
Huh?
How so? How was it like a film?
It was just like I was watching myself do it.
The prosecutor on the case called it the worst crime scene he's ever seen, as details started to pour in about Djerf and his obsession with violent films and disturbing home decor.
There was like this mommy type of skeleton figurine, about 5 foot, like a female type of thing hanging on a noose from his bedroom.
After conviction, Djerf knew his likely next stop was death row.
What if he says the death penalty?
I expect death penalty. That way, if I do get it, I won't be devastated.
After 3 decades to reflect, Djerf didn't want to do a final on-camera interview, but has been messaging me ahead of his execution. He said at the time he became obsessed with blaming his co-worker Albert, and that spun out of control. He says Albert was always innocent, and that he is truly sorry for the pain he has caused and the lives he took, hoping his own death brings a measure of peace decades later.
If you're part of that family that had to suffer through that, and to think to suffer for 30 years before you get the outcome that you probably wanted as well, that's a long time.
Okay, so thank you to everybody who was watching that. Scott Passmore for being a part of that as well. It was a crazy jailhouse interview he did. Apologies to the people who were watching on YouTube. We actually had a little bit of an internet hit, which we believe took us offline on YouTube for a second. So we should be back here now. So if you're joining us live, you can go back and play that package, that story with our anchor, and then the jailhouse interview with Richard Djerf. But let's just talk about what I think this is going to be like tomorrow as somebody witnessing this. It is odd to be messaging with the killer, knowing he's going to die tomorrow. It's an odd situation, and we don't usually get access like this. I've been a part, at least, of several executions, and usually the inmate does not talk to us a lot. We did want to do a jailhouse interview with Djerf. He said no, but he has been very vocal over messaging, which is just typically access we don't have. But this is interesting. I want to read you guys the very last message he sent to me today. I asked him if he had any final thoughts, emotions, feelings, and how his week in Florence had been, because where the prison is here in Arizona, it's about an hour and a half outside Phoenix, and very desolate, of course, where prisons typically are. That's where the executions happen. But actual death row in Arizona has now been moved to Tucson. So the inmates have to be transferred or transported up here to the Phoenix area, to Florence, for about a week, and then they have to be on homicide and suicide watch to make sure that they don't try to take their own lives before their actual execution, which I thought was interesting. So I asked him, how has it been? Do you have any final words? This is what he messaged me today, this afternoon, his final message to me before he'll be put to death tomorrow. Quote, I've done my best to make amends and I'm at peace with this. When this is over, I hope the focus will change from what horrible things I did to the Luna family to something more positive about who they were. Damien, Rochelle, Patricia, Albert, those are the names that should be remembered, not mine. Thought that was interesting. We don't know if other members of the Luna family will be at the execution tomorrow. I have reached out and I'm not sure yet if they're going to be coming. So that will be interesting because sometimes family will come to these executions after so many decades of waiting for justice for their loved ones. So they would speak tomorrow potentially if they come. Other people I expect to be there. Sometimes you have the attorney general who shows up. Sometimes you have the Maricopa County attorney who also becomes part of this. And so I will probably be with them in the execution room. And just to kind of let you know how this goes from a standpoint of what I know to be true, I'll be taken into a room. Richard Djerf will be on this kind of like gurney type deal behind a glass window. There will be curtains over it. And almost like a puppet show, the curtains will open. And then that's when we'll start to see the doctors who are in there and the nurses giving him the IV, which typically the hardest thing to find can be getting that IV actually in. We have had some botched lethal injections in Arizona in years past, but we are hopeful that this time this one will go just fine. The past couple have. And if all goes as well, he should basically just go to sleep and then pass away. So this will be interesting to see how this goes. We're going to have a live stream on AZ Family tomorrow. I will be part of the press conference with the people who witnessed this, prosecutors likely as well, and then prison staff as well. So stay with us, AZ Family. He should be being executed tomorrow at 10 a.m. Maybe an hour or two after that is when the press conference will happen, depending on how long this all takes. And so it should be interesting. We'll have live reports as well from tomorrow morning at the prison, and then, of course, the reaction after. Alexis Dominguez, who's been on the show before as a reporter, will be covering it, interviewing me, and then dealing with all the other sound that will be coming from those who are part of it as well, and have that on our 4, 5, and 6 p.m. newscast here in Arizona tomorrow. So stay tuned. Definitely interesting. My first execution I'll witness. Honestly, wouldn't mind it being the last either. It's such a weird situation, but I do think as somebody who covers true crime, I should know from start to finish how the death penalty and execution process works. So I do think this is important for my career to be able to give you guys more knowledge, analysis, and background when we're dealing with death penalty cases, which in my profession is all the time.